It's simple mathematics. It's simple mathematics.
Hello and welcome to Kicking Assets, the podcast where every week we give you the chance to fill your footy boots as we tackle the intersection of finance and football. I'm Z, aka the Reluctant Accountant, and I'm going to give you some anecdotes and stories about the finance and numbers that happen off the field so you can get a bit more context about what's going on it. And I'm joined, as always, by my illustrious co-host, Mr. Rickie Haywood-Williams.
Yo,
Welcome.
what's going on?
How are you?
I'm good, man.
I see that, the sartorial fit has changed for this week. Wow. Wash day.
Wash day all day. Today.
Love this for you. I was loving the salmon. So how have you been over the past week?
Yeah, been good, man. Been good. There's been a lot of activity in the transfer market. So looking forward to getting into that.
And how is it that your prediction didn't really come true, did it?
See, there's no need for that. There's no need for that. It's not,
you bringing the bad vibes because you didn't want to change your clothes. That's what happened. I'm so sorry, lionesses. What did you think of that? Did you even manage to catch the game?
I did see the game, and ultimately we were just beaten by the better team.
Right.
I think before the tournament, Spain were one of the favourites,
right?
And yeah, they were just better than us. They executed their game plan better than we did. But Lionesses, they did well, man, to get to the final.
They did. You know what? And an England team hasn't been in a World Cup final for a very long time. There you go. There you go. So we're speaking of. So Spain obviously won the World Cup.
Yes.
Keeping it a little bit Latin today. We're going to talk.
I like the way there was a little shimmy.
Did you see that? Did you see that? What? You see that? I'm going to be on. What's that thing that you want? The dancing one. What was that?
Strictly Come Dancing.
Strictly Come Dancing. What? Hit me up. How you mean? You didn't see that shoulder? Tens all round. As we're keeping it Latin, I thought, you know what? Let's go over to Italia. Let's go over to Italy.
Yes.
And we're talking about the old lady.
Yes.
Who's that?
Juventus.
Exactly.
Yes.
Not the only Juvie we've been to. No, I'm joking. But yeah, we're going to talk about Juventus because obviously, anyone that knows about anything about football, you'll know that at the beginning of the year there was a big scandal. They had initially it was 15 points that were deducted, and then it was down to 10 points, and then they've been banned from Europe for the year. We'll get into all of that scandal, but every good story, we're going to start in the beginning. But before I get there,
What you got?
Why don't you give me something? What do you know about Juventus? Because I know you were looking up a few little facts.
Well,
so
there was a fact that I heard years and years ago, and I just want to double check that it was still correct. So apparently, back in the day, we're talking in the early years of football, when transfers between countries was still quite scarce.
Yeah,
there was an Englishman playing for Juventus, and apparently Juventus. They wanted a football kit that fared well in the elements, as it were. And they asked this Englishman who was playing for Juventus at the time, "Do you know anyone that could supply a kit for us?" He was from Nottingham, and he asked his team, Notts County, to supply some kits, and that's how they ended up wearing the black and white.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Yeah. Because before that, they had something pink and they had bow ties.
Did they really?
Yeah, they had bow ties. Yeah.
Wow.
So basically, Juventus they were founded in 1897, and it was from Turin, and they were rich, the upper class people. So I think the working class people supported Torino, and Juventus were so that's where they had their bow ties and everything else like that. So they had that, and then what happened in, I think it was 1923, a guy called Giovanni, let me just see, Agnelli. I don't know if I've said that right. It is what it is. Right. Thank you. Agnelli. What? He took over. He was this big kind of businessman, mogul or whatever, and that kind of really firmed it as they're that club to aspire to. Yes. And actually, the story of Juventus is very much intertwined with the Agnelli's family. The last 100 years, they've been like the Kennedys. Right. Dubbed myself there. See that? They've been like the Kennedys. No, honestly, in terms of the things that have happened, I was writing down some of the things. So they've had Eduardo Agnelli, who was the chair, he was the chairman. I think he was like grandson of like the Giovanni.
Okay.
Died in a plane accident in 1935.
Oh.
One of the couple's son died in a psychiatric unit in 65.
Oh.
Another grandchild had like 33. Like there was deaths. There's also, and then Gianni Agnelli, who was also Giovanni's grandson, he became chairman in 47. And he used to hang out with Rita Hayworth. He actually had an affair with Winston Churchill's daughter-in-law.
What?
Yeah. Like,
wow.
was out there doing
Is
like,
that a movie?
No, but it's like proper Kennedy stuff. Do you know what I mean? Like the Marilyn Monroe thing or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, they were doing all of this. And like that kind of. So what do you think of Juventus? Because like, there's like, what do you think of them as a club and that attitude?
I look at Juventus like from a fan's point of view, growing up watching football. When I was younger, the Italian league was the elite league in Europe. All the biggest players were there. They used to win like the biggest European competitions quite a lot, like your AC Milans and your Inters. There was a massive World Cup there in Italia 90. So yeah, Juventus was the club that I looked at Juventus like the Manchester United or Liverpool of Italian football.
Okay.
So they're an absolute giant.
So they are that, and also I think kind of quite unique in Italy. So Italy's quite regional, and people are like very much in their kind of regional thing. Whereas Juventus are quite widely liked when they are liked throughout the nation. However, they were also, I think, a little bit like Marmite. So they're kind of widely liked and widely hated, if you get what I mean.
Correct.
So there was this one little like anecdote that I found that I thought that was really good to share. There was a guy called Boniperti. I'm gonna say Boniperti. What? Don't know. There's a guy called Boniperti, and he used to play for them, and he became chairman. And he was playing between 1946 and 61, and he scored 178 goals.
Wow.
Right, but his salary wasn't like commensurate to the value that he was bringing to the club at the time, because in Italy they had a wage cap.
Okay.
So, and to get around this, Gianni Agnelli, I'm going to be fluent at the end of this. No, I'm going to be so good.
Ciao, man.
Yeah, exactly. I actually swore in that, so you might want to dub that out. But that's the only thing I know, like learning swear words. But so basically, he would give him a cow for every goal that he scored.
Cow?
Yeah, a cow, because he was the son of a farmer, right? So for them, that was good.
Course.
And obviously, like, what else they got in it? They ain't got internet. It's like 40s. What do they have there? They didn't even have electricity. So basically, they're giving him a cow, and the farmer, I guess it's a farmer, the farmer that was selling the cows came and complained, and he was like, all of the cows that they're choosing are the ones that are with calves. So they're like pregnant. So they're like getting more, and basically someone was like, yeah, that's classic Juventus. So that kind of sets the scene for the kind of, circumnavigation and
the skullduggery that is to follow.
The false accounting that you know what false accounting, it just makes me, it's funny. It sounds like alternative facts.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Just say lies. Just say lies. They're not like, do you know what I mean? Like, why are we making up new words and phrases? So anyway, recent Juventus scandals, because there's been obviously a few more.
There's been a lot, especially in Italian football per se.
Yeah. So late 90s, do you know what they were for the 90s? Because you might get them mixed up, because there's been a few.
I remember hearing Sir Alex Ferguson, formerly of Manchester United, saying that he had a conversation with a referee back in the day, and they were like, look, Manchester United, you're a great team, but you're never going to win the European Cup because you guys don't deal with bribes.
So that was Calciopoli. So that was that was the big scandal. That was in the 2000s that came out when they were influencing referees.
Right.
Yeah, you're right. And Juventus were spearheading that. Look at you, leaders. What? So they were, you know what, if you're going to be the top at something, do you know what I mean? Like, even if it's criminality, let's just be the best.
Wow.
So they did that. But in the 90s, they actually had a club doctor that was found guilty of giving performance enhancing drugs to players.
Really?
Yeah. It was later overturned on appeal, but this was much later. But that was also late 90s when there was winning everything. So who knows?
Mad.
And then they had 2016, they had they're calling them a support, a liaison officer or whatever, but somebody died by suicide, apparently, or it might have been homicide.
Okay.
Yeah. And that was when all of the things started to come out about possible like deals with the ultras and organized crime and all of these kind of things. And you know about the ultras, right?
Yeah, so the ultras are like the fraternity within a football club. Normally in Europe, they have their own section where they are just the ultimate extreme fan.
Extreme.
And they have a lot of sway on
in the
what the club does, who they sign, who they don't sign, and they let their voices be heard when they're not happy.
And it's very organized.
Very organized.
Very organized and very sometimes violent.
Terrifying.
Yeah, and you know, so actually that supporter that died, apparently he was what is it when they, I don't know if they snitch because that sounds mad. An informant. That was it. Sorry. So sorry.
Snitches get stitches.
I mean, he didn't. He went for a swim in a viaduct, but involuntarily. But so he didn't need stitches because the water just washed it away. Anyway, so he was an informant for the Secret Services on the kind of, because they have like really, some of them are quite political, so they're like far right or far left or whatever. So he was doing that and also informing. I mean, it didn't really work out, but like he was forming because apparently the Calabrian, you know what I mean? Calabrian mafia were in the ultras in the Juventus terraces. So that was all going on there. That was all that. So the new scandal, the scandal that we're dealing with this year, we need to go back. We need to go back to see the origin story. Everything has a good origin story. So basically, they had the scandal in 2006, the Calciopoli, whatever it was, and then obviously Juventus got relegated to Serie B.
That's right.
Yeah. So they got relegated to Serie B, and then what happened was Andrea Agnelli, who was the grandson of Eduardo, which was the guy that died in the plane crash. So he becomes chairman, and he appoints as CEO a guy called Marotta, I think that was his name, Beppe Marotta. So he appoints him, and they're doing bits, like they're moving. Andrea's like, yeah, I'm in this. I know I need to bring in more money. They start like really branding. So they're like, keep doing, I don't know if you've seen, because I'm not like super into it, but apparently they had the J logo and they're putting it everywhere. That's and they had like a J museum and a J hotel and, you know, everything with J on it. If your name is J, just go over there and be like, this is all mine, you know, like that. So they did all of this, and it was going quite well for a while. So as with all things, he flew too close to the sun. So in April of 2018, Juventus lost at home to Real Madrid in the Champions League. And the chairman was like, no, we want to win, because in 2015 they lost, in 2017, and he was like fixated on winning. So do you know what he did?
No, I don't remember this.
Okay. So he decided to buy Ronaldo.
Oh, yeah, of course.
This is the beginning of the end, right?
Of course.
So he convinced himself that he's going to pay like 100 and something million for Ronaldo. He's going to buy him. This is going to be the best thing ever. Marotta, the CEO, doesn't agree with this decision. He was like, it's going to upset the apple cart, things that we've spoken, it's not a good idea. Just throwing like good money after bad, it's not going to work.
Because up until this point, they were on a decent trajectory.
Yeah, they were. And it was working out, like it was gelling, right? So they get him in. They do a few things. It doesn't work out. He was right. And then there's this inflationary wage pressure, because he's on essentially like 54 million a year, which collectively is more than most of the Serie A players are getting. Correct. So there's this thing that they have to do, and they have to try and balance it. And obviously from an FFP point of view, the percentage of their bill or their income, you know, like their revenue to wage ratio is through the roof. So this is when they start getting creative, okay? So because they have to, right? So Marotta leaves. Ronaldo comes in and Marotta leaves. He's like, I appreciate that integrity. He's like, he's a man of word. He's like, no, bun that. I'm gonna bounce, yeah.
I'm out.
So he goes, he leaves, and then his successor, I've got to get his name right, is called Paratici. I think I pronounced that right. He's called Paratici, and he starts just swapping players.
Right.
And that, why would you do that? Why would you do that? It's the way that those things are accounted for.
When you say swapping players,
so like just doing deals to swap club players with other clubs.
Right.
The reason that you would do that is because, as I've said before, a player, whilst they receive a wage, they are an asset for the club. And there's a thing called capital gain when you dispose of an asset. So if you have you don't have on your primary residence, for example, but if you have another buy-to-let property, when you sell it, the gain that you make on the sale, it's taxable, right? And it's a gain, and it's recognized as profit. Same thing with a player. Now, this is really good. And I actually remember this one because in 2020, I thought I was going to die, right? I thought I was going to die, and I thought, you know what? Let me just like learn something new in it. So when I get down there and I'm looking up at you guys, looking up. because I RSVP'd, so I'm definitely going down. So like when I get downstairs and I'm dying, I was like, you know what, let me know about football, because I'm sure some of these hooligans are going to be down there and I want to be able to banter with them while I'm burning. So so in 2020, they had this transfer, and it was, I need to look at this because everyone's going to get at me for pronunciation. Miralem Pjanic. Pjanic, his name was, and I think he was Bosnian, and they organised a swap with Arthur Melo, who's Brazilian, who was with Barcelona.
Right. Okay.
So this was quite widely reported, actually. I wasn't even like really into football, but it was everywhere because of the way it worked. So it was like 60 million was being Pjanic. I'm just going to call him Pjanic if it's not right.
I think that's right.
Like, yeah.
That's right.
So Pjanic was being sold for 60 million, and Melo was being sold for 72 million. Now, if I buy you for 60 million, how we account for that is every year, say it's a 5-year contract or whatever it is, every year we're going to account for that equally over those years.
The structure
right?
of the deal or whatever.
Exactly. So say Pjanic is there for 5 years and he was 10 million initially. Every year he goes down, his value goes down by 2 million. If I then sell him by 60 million, then the difference, the 56 million, is going to be my profit.
Right.
What was happening, they were making up numbers. That guy wasn't worth that. But you can just do that. If I make a deal with you and I just inflate these numbers, I realize a profit. There's no real realization of profit. But in my accounts, it looks like I'm profitable. We've got around the FFP thing, haven't we?
Right,
We've got these. So this is the stuff that they were doing. And Pjanic was initially brought in because he was there to replace another midfielder that was like quite a playmaker. And I don't know what Pjanic was doing, but it just didn't work out. As Uncle Junior would say, he never had the makings of a varsity athlete. So like it just was not going to work out. So so they got rid of him. But that was one of the things that would trigger off a closer look at what they were doing. This thing was rampant. Like they even had a word for it. I don't know if I had the word, but basically they were literally like speaking to auditors and they were like, how can we like befuddle the investigators? Yeah, they were doing all of this, and then it found out, and I'm just going to end here, and it says they said that there was 7 million in debt with Atalanta that had never been entered into the balance sheet. They owed an agent 400,000. They had an IOU for Ronaldo for some money. Damn. They were just out here moving very mad. And so I leave you with this. There's a whole mess that's going on there with Juventus, and this recent scandal where they've got their 10 points docked and they're out of Europe. They may actually be pleased about being out of Europe though, because because Europe
generates a lot of money
anyway. So they didn't make the big Europe. Yeah, so I think they would have been in the West Ham Europa. Not that that's not big, it's great, come on you Irons. But like they would have been in like the mini one.
Sure.
And a lot of clubs, for mid-tier clubs, that's great, but a lot of the big clubs, the commitment to playing those games, it kind of takes away and it's a bit exhausting, and you don't get the return on it.
Yeah.
So they may not be that bothered about being out of it for a year. They can regroup.
And to be fair to them, they've been in a situation like this before where they've been docked points, lost players, and they're still here.
They'll rise again, because you know what? Behind every big business is a crime. That's not what I said. Don't come for me, Mafia. But yeah, so that is the story of Juventus, and I just thought it was really fascinating.
No, it is fascinating.
And also lovely. There was so much more I could have gone into, but I don't want any Mafia people turning up at my door. I love spaghetti, so I'm going to move it strictly over to you.
All right, I love spaghetti too. Right, so let's talk transfers. Let's talk about a club that I mentioned on our pod not so long ago, that West Ham at the time were the only Premier League club to not have bought or sold anyone.
Okay.
They've now obviously sorted that out.
Okay.
They've got somebody in called Edson Alvarez. They've also bought a player called James Ward-Prowse for about £30 million.
Okay.
He basically got bought from Southampton, who he was their captain, and Southampton got relegated last year. So it's a bit of a fire sale.
Right,
they need to make some money. So they've been quite clever. They bought him for 30 million. Great return. He's already provided a couple of goals. He's actually one of the Premier League's leading dead ball specialists. I think he's about to take over David Beckham in terms of how many free kicks he's scored. Okay. So he's been a good investment. However, they also tried to buy Manchester United's former captain, Harry Maguire. Now, I think the price was again £30 million. Now, this is where transfers kind of can be quite annoying for the fans, because the two clubs had agreed on 30 million, and they'd agreed the fee. The deal was done. All that was left was for Harry Maguire to say, "Okay, I'm happy to go to West Ham," and he declined to go.
Oh,
So
really?
He was like, "Why would I leave Manchester United? I'm gonna stay here." So even though Manchester United are willing to sell him, and really they want him to go, he doesn't want to leave.
So he's not at the end of his contract then?
He's still within his contract.
Okay.
But I don't know. It's that conundrum. If a team that you're playing for is willing to
sell you, they obviously don't want you.
They don't want you.
Wow, it's giving toxic relationship a little bit, isn't it? Wow. Let's call Aloni and see what she says.
Just a little bit of toxic vibes. The problem with that situation as well was the manager of West Ham did the fatal thing of talking about the deal before it had actually been kind of like dotted the I's and crossed the T's and all that sort of stuff. And it didn't go through. So
make moves in silence. That'll learn you. Don't do that, bro.
But it's not all bad for West Ham. Like I said, they bought James Ward-Prowse. He's a great player, and they got him for quite cheap as well because he's an England international.
Oh, okay.
And he scores goals and he creates goals. So West Ham.
So in that situation, like, have there been many of that kind of where people have been? I mean, I know we've had the whole dance with Mbappe, but we're not even talking about him. But like, have there been many situations like that this transfer window where people have been offered stuff and they're like, "I'm not going"?
Yes.
Ooh.
Unfortunately, with my club. So basically, I'm a Liverpool fan. Now, Liverpool, I mentioned it before as well, we're going through a bit of a rebuild, a bit of a transitional time. We've sold a lot of our midfielders. Some of them went for free. Some of them were just released. And some of them were sold spontaneously because of Saudi teams came in and just went, "We want your players." And they sold them, right? So there's been a midfield rebuild in the process. But the problem is Liverpool are kind of working ad hoc because they didn't know that some of these transfers were going to happen. So they're now kind of working in the dark. They're scrambling a little bit because they hadn't planned to be in this position. So that being said, they've gone after a couple of players. One in particular was called Romeo Lavia. He was also at Southampton, who got relegated. So they're like, "Okay, well, give us the money and you can have him." Now, Liverpool didn't value him very highly in terms of what Southampton did. So I think they wanted to buy him for about 40 million. Southampton was saying he's a 50 million pound player. Now Liverpool was saying he's only 19. He hasn't played that many games. It's a bit of an inflated price, but they were like, "Do you want him or not? do you want the guy or not? Do you want him or not?" They pay the money. So Liverpool came back with a second bid, which was like 45 million. They were like, "It's not 50 million. Show us the money." They came back with the third bid. It was around 47 million. They were like,
"Find the three. Come on."
You'd think they'd just find that
come
extra.
on, you're doing too much now.
So while they were doing this, Chelsea,
swooped in,
who always seem to just buy anybody who's available, swooped in and made an offer of, I think it was 48 million. And they were also courting another player called Moses Caicedo for the last 6 months or whatever. And Liverpool then said, "Okay, well, if you're going to bid for Lavia, we'll just bid for Caicedo." So then there's this weird dance.
This chaos happening.
This is something that I've never seen before in the transfer market, not to my knowledge. So they've both gone after each other's players that they've kind of been courting. So Liverpool have then gone for Caicedo and have bid a British transfer record bid of 111 million pounds.
Hold on, so they had the 3 million then?
They had the 3 million. They had the 3 mil. They had the 3 mil. But what I think has happened is, I think Liverpool are owned by both clubs are owned by owners from the US. And I think there's a bit of
pissing competition.
Who's got the biggest schlong? I think that's what it's come down to. But it didn't really work out well for Liverpool because Caicedo, who Liverpool bid that amazing amount of money for, had his heart set on going to Chelsea. So even though Liverpool had bid more and had their bid accepted, he turned around and said, "Thank you, but I still want to go to Chelsea." So then Liverpool looked really stupid because they didn't end up with that player, and they lost out on the player that they were going after.
So they both went to Chelsea?
So they both went to Chelsea.
Wow.
So to answer your question, yes, that does happen.
Okay. Wow. Have a word, didn't it? What's going on?
We have bought a player since then, a player that I've never heard of before. His name's Endo Wataru. He's the Japanese captain. He played for Stuttgart. Our manager seemed to know about him because he played in the German league. I've never heard of him. He seems like he's okay.
How much was he?
19 million.
Well, obviously. Yeah. Love that, don't you? Liverpool.
Liverpool, up your game.
Coupons.
Up your game. So It's been eventful.
It has been. Any last minute? Did Man United ever get bought?
So the Man United situation, no is the answer. That's been rumbling on. That I don't think that's going to get sorted out.
I've withdrawn my bid. You know what? I'm not interested anymore.
I think you'd be right to withdraw the bid.
They're playing me around. Like, do you know what I mean? I can't take that. You know?
It's a disrespect.
No, exactly. I need commitment and consistency. Wow. Okay, so they're still up for sale. What else have we got? What have we been doing?
Okay, so I mentioned it before as well. There's been like an ongoing saga with Spurs, Harry Kane, and Bayern Munich. Now, Bayern Munich wanted Harry Kane. Harry Kane wanted to leave. He didn't necessarily want to go to Bayern Munich in the beginning, so I've heard. He was like, I just want to go and win trophies. But Spurs said, we're not going to sell you to anybody in the Premier League because why would we make another team stronger who are our rivals? So you can go, but you have to go abroad. Sure. So Bayern Munich were the main suitor. They came with a bid of around £80 million. They got rejected. They bid again. 84. You get what I'm saying? Yeah. But Daniel Levy, the chairman of Spurs, was holding out for I think 100 million. And at the time, I personally didn't think that Harry Kane was worth 100 million only because of his age, not because of his ability. Amazing player. But Daniel Levy was like, look, either pay the money or, you know, like we'll keep him. But the conundrum was, if Harry Kane stayed at Spurs, he would have been able to go for free next year and go to any club of his choosing.
And an English club.
And an English club, and make a massive amount of money in his signing on bonus as well. So Daniel Levy was kind of like in a situation where people were going, you're cutting off your nose to spite your face. However, it worked out. And Bayern Munich lost their nerve, and they paid the 100 million.
They paid it.
They paid it.
How do you get someone from 18 million starting point to 100?
80.
Oh, 80. I was like 18.
80.
Wow. Okay, that makes more sense.
It was about 80 at first, then about 85, and then I think they went up to 90, and then he was like, "Pay me 100 million, or don't chat to me. Wow. Don't chat to me, innit? Don't ring me."
I feel like I would be really good at this because I'm good at holding my nerve, like playing chicken. Yeah. And I you know, you're like, oh, Daniel, leave it. I cut off my nose to spite my face every day. Every day. Are you crazy? I will sit there. You know what makes me much stronger than you? I can take pain much longer than you. Like I will just sit there and hold it. So.
But it's just a crazy way to kind of do business. But you have to give props to Daniel Levy because he was like, he's our biggest asset. Yeah. I know what he's worth. You either pay it or you don't. And even if it means that we lose him next year for free, for nothing, I'm willing to take that gamble.
I rate that though. I'm not going to lie. I rate it still. Yeah. Well done. Shout out to you, man.
And it's worked out because Harry Kane's already scored a goal. He's made a goal. He settled into the team. So Bayern Munich, they're winning. They're winning.
Oh. Okay, well, I'll feed you some pet. That's the only thing I know to say in German. Dankeschön. That's it. But yeah, so that's what's going on in the market.
That's what's going on, man.
Okay, that's lovely. So I think we're going to have to wrap it up for today.
Cool.
I know it's really sad, but I'm going to see you next week, so don't worry. I'll save your space. So we'll be back next week. I think next week I'm going to bring back to South. Let's talk about Wimbledon.
Wimbledon,
and I said Wimbledon on purpose. Wimbledon FC. We're going to talk about a little bit about the story behind Wimbledon FC, and maybe you'll have a little recap for us on a little retrospective on what's going on.
100%.
Yeah, that's all from us. Thanks.
Kick in, asset.
This episode is produced by Nito Darte Evans, Justin Chinieri, sound recorded by Ben Ring, and was filmed in Renaissance Studios in London.
Asset. Asset.